Hello, welcome to my mentor session. Happy to have you here, and I appreciate you if you're watching. I'll roll right into some questions here in a few minutes, but hopefully I can provide some answers that provide real value to you guys. I know a lot of you, but for those of you I don't know, my name's Dan Truex. I'm the CEO for a company called Guardian Security, a security company that's primarily in Central Kentucky. We have about 50 employees and do about 12,000 hours a month of security, although that's getting ready to grow quite a bit here in the very near future, so I'm excited about that. Before we get started, I did want to mention one of the comments Sean made in the group, talking about sacrifice and just, I guess, people's perceptions of what that takes. It was, I think, a post by Kevin O'Leary originally. But, I honestly believe you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything. And you have to make sacrifice. You look at all these books out there, which like Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week, which is a widely misunderstood book, by the way. But and people have this perception that they can just somehow start a business, put a couple hours in a week, and then bam, next thing you know, they're multimillionaires or whatever. And that is simply not the reality, especially up front. You can get there, but there has to be sacrifices made at the beginning, and often quite a bit of sacrifice. So I just wanted to address that very briefly. It's so important to understand that going into this. You cannot be an entrepreneur and not sacrifice something. And people just don't want to do that. And I know that there's some statistics out there by the Small Business Administration about what causes businesses to fail. But I bet one that's widely misrepresented or underrepresented is that willingness to sacrifice and put the hard work in up front that it takes to actually get there. But one of the things that you need to understand too is having a vision for your life helps makes that sacrifice worth it. I think so many people just start like, oh, I want to get rich, or oh, I want to do X. And what they don't do is sit down and say, where do I want to be at in 10 years? What do I want my life to look like in 10 years? Or even 3 years or whatever. And they don't sit there and really think through that. They have a vague idea and they're kind of bouncing all over the place. I would encourage you, if you don't have a vision for your life and your business, I'll talk about that when I'm answering one of the questions, but if you don't have a vision for your life as well as your business, like how are you ever going to get to where you really want to be? So establishing that vision, taking 3, 4, 5 hours and just going somewhere and really mapping that out, what that looks like. I would really, really encourage you to do that. It can really help direct your growth and what you're willing to do to get there. So you have to have, just sacrifice made in a vacuum has no value. Sacrifice for a vision that you actually really want to live has tremendous value. So consider that. And with that said, my rambling, we will move into the questions. So I have 5 today. The first one is from Carrington. And question that she asked was, how do you know if you have a business partner, having a business partner is the right decision for your business? Business description and background of question. I am a commercial product photographer, and the other day I had someone approach me with a pitch to partner with me on my business. I know they have a solid photography background, but I don't know how to know if, when those decisions are made or the steps that are taken to come to a decision. I feel like I'm at a position where my business is slowly starting to take shape and get traction, but this pitch caught me off guard and I don't know what to think about it. Okay, so Carrington, I have several points here. Anytime you're considering bringing on a business partner, the very first question I might ask you is, how does that person add value to your business that you don't already provide or you can't provide? I think what people do with business partners a lot of times and why they like business partners is that business partner provides a security blanket. You don't feel like you're alone. But that's not the right reason to bring on a business partner. It's kind of almost like a security blanket of sorts for entrepreneurs. You have a business partner, you've got somebody else there. The honest answer is that you could bounce a lot of this stuff off of people in AO, or if you're having issues or you don't know how, without taking on a business partner. And then I just talked about vision, but my question is, how does that business partner help you reach the vision for your company? Because if they can't and they don't, and it's just another person to do the exact same stuff you're already doing, and they're not going to provide exponential growth versus linear, then they don't really provide any value to you. And even though they might be great at photography, my question is, what actual value do they, and it has to be more than just that that value, they have to somehow be or create or cause exponential type growth versus linear. If you just have 1 + 1, you're just giving up half your business for nothing, or whatever percentage of equity you get, which I highly would recommend not doing 50%. There's a lot of different ways you can approach that, by the way, but if you're interested in those, we could talk more about those. Shoot me a message. I'd give you some other ideas. One specifically that I remember Joe Gandara gave to me. He calls it the Golden Handcuffs, but won't go into that here since that's not part of your question. But they have to bring value that an employee doesn't, and they have to add a skill set or some kind of something you're lacking as a business partner before you would have any reason to bring them on. So consider that. And I've had some bad experiences and some good experiences with business partners. So I have one business partner. He's my CFO now. I'd take him with me in any business if he was interested, and he provided a skill set that I needed in that business. I've had other business partners that I would not. And one of the problems with business partners who don't provide value is, especially when they're actually a partner and they have equity, is you cannot fire somebody with equity. Once you give up that equity, they can walk off and do whatever. Again, there are ways around that. That's why you have a strong operating agreement, and that operating agreement needs to be very, very clear about whose roles are what and what the responsibilities are and how you remove a person. But yeah, I had a business partner that it cost us $250,000 to get rid of. And if he was still on, our business would not be anywhere near the size it is today. And not only that, it cost even, significantly more at this point in our business to get rid of him. So keep that in mind. Once you give up equity, you cannot get it back without some kind of painful event usually, whether that costs you money, even the business failing, but you cannot fire them. You cannot fire somebody with equity. So keep that in mind. One thing to consider that if you do move forward with a business partner is test it out. So, and what I mean by that is give it like a period of a month before any kind of agreement is made. Give them a project and see how they run with it, how they're able to accomplish something that you need done that really helps your business grow. Even agree maybe just to, hey, pay them a kind of a fee, like, hey, I'll pay you X dollars if you do this project, and we'll see how we work together. We'll see how this turns out. We'll see what value it provides for the business before you go into any agreement. I don't know how well you know this person. Maybe you've known him for years, but the little bit you gave me here, just a solid background in photography would not be anywhere near enough to be a business partner with me. And I'll tell you this too, is that, you say this, that your business is starting to gain traction and everything else. If you're doing something right, you're moving in the right direction, how do they help you continue on that path? How do they help you, again, exponentially grow versus linear? Because if it's just going to be 1 + 1 = 2, there's no point for you. There's no value whatsoever. So consider those things, Carrington. Like I said, if you want to talk about some other options about how you can add a person without actually giving them equity, how you keep them on board, shoot me a message. I can give you a couple brief ideas there as well. All right. My next question is from Brad. And Brad asks, how do I figure out the next steps when I'm lost in taking company to the next level? And then business description and background of question. Hello, we have talked about foundation before and taking steps to build a brand and brand awareness. I feel as of right now, I am just starting to get traction with my target audience, meaning followers on social networks, people interacting with me online, feedback on my products, face-to-face interaction at shows where I get all good responses and reactions, as well as sales starting to pick up and people wearing my apparel. How do I know what the next step is, or should I keep doing what I'm doing and slowly continue and let it all fall into place? Okay, Brad. So, well, number one, things don't all just fall into place. You got to do something to make those things happen. So keep that in mind. But, I guess the analogy I would use here is, have you ever done a maze in one of those like kids books or whatever? I think they have adult versions too, where you do the maze and you're trying to figure out if you go left or right or what your next step is. And then the reverse of that is, have you ever done the maze and started at the end? And it's always so much easier if you start at the end to work your way through. And the point I'm making there, and it goes back to vision, because I opened this with talking about vision, but what is the vision for your business? And I don't mean the next month or the 2 months. I mean, what is your 3-year vision? Because that often makes it crystal clear what your next step is. And again, I don't mean some vague vision, and I've referenced this every single time just about, but this is the vision for my company, Guardian Security. And I've got just a little over 2 years, or sorry, a little less than 2 years left in this vision, but it details every single thing about my business, our systems, the brand, our organizational structure, what kind of clients we serve, our office space, how we interact with the media, our financials. Every single part is a vision. It's crystal clear. It's something that we give to every single employee, every single team member or leader in my organization has a copy of it. But if you want to know what your next step is, it starts by knowing where you want to end up at. If you don't know where you want to end up at, then again, you need to spend that time to really dig into this. And this was a process that probably took me several days, and then I got it, actually put together as a little booklet and whatnot. But and then the second part of that is just to get to that vision, then you need to have a defined growth process. And so when I say defined growth process, it's how do we actually, it's not just saying I want to take this step, it's saying how do we take these steps? To kind of explain that a little bit more, again, with my company, I have the vision I've laid out, but above this I have what's called a BHAG, our Big Hairy Audacious Goal. It's like a 10, 12 plus year thing. That's just this massive, massive goal for our company. So that's made up of 2, 3, 4 of these visions. And then after that, we have a 12-week planning process where we actually say, hey, what can we do in the next 12 weeks that moves us closer to this vision? And how do we do that step by step? So we'll every 12 weeks, the leadership team sits down. We identify what do we want to do each individually. We spend some time mapping that out each week. Like, okay, to get to the end of this 12-week cycle, I want to be here. I map it out week by week, how I'm going to get there. Everybody on the team does the same. And we look at that and say, okay, at the end of 12 weeks, this is what our company will look like if we all do what we say we're going to do. Now, to get us there, we have weekly accountability meetings that say, hey, what did we say I was going to do last week? What are we doing this week? What am I stuck on and need help with? And we hold each other accountable. And then we have daily huddles as well, where we say, what's the most important thing? One of the questions we answer that is what's the most important thing I'm doing for this 12-week process? And so it's having that defined process, and it doesn't have to be anything like mine. You can make yours whatever you want, but to actually reach that goal. So we don't ever have that problem of saying, hey, what is our next step? I mean, it's always like we have 30, I guess our bigger problem would be, we have 90 steps we need to take. What's the priority? But again, it all comes back to vision, and it's always going to come back to vision and understanding exactly where you want to be. And the more defined that is, the clearer that is, the easier it is to know what your next step's going to be. And sometimes that growth process I talked about, it's going to change over time as well. Not just your growth process, your vision, like where you want to be at in 10 years today may not, in 5 years, that may not be the same. But that's okay. That's part of it. You just keep constantly adjusting that, and you're constantly moving towards your goals. And it's going to require some experimentation about what works for you and what doesn't. The other thing I would say is that you talked about that you are getting traction. You said let it fall into place. I don't know that I would, again, I don't like the let it fall into place part of it, but if you're getting traction and you're doing stuff that works, my question would be, can you do more of the same stuff? So do the exact same thing you're doing, do more of it, or hire somebody, which would be better, to do more of it for you, to do the exact same thing, and then use that to actually grow. So consider that. And then the flip side of that is, if you can't do more of it, then what your process now doesn't work, at least at scale. So you cannot scale your business up because you can't do more of what's making you successful now. You have to change something or identify a new way to do that scales better. So hopefully that makes sense, Brad. Again, if it didn't or you have any questions, you guys are always free to message me to get more details or for me to further kind of explain my answer. So anyways, good luck. Next question is from AJ. Question AJ asked is, how would you pursue an overdue accounts receivable with a client? Business description and background of question: a former client owes about a 1.5 month retainer for work performed in good faith. And I'll come back to that statement. I've pursued this for about 2 months and they haven't responded to any inquiries. In hindsight, I shouldn't have carried on in good faith for nearly that long before ending the retainer, but I was caught off guard because they were running well, it seemed. What do you do in situations like this? Okay, so I'm going to give you a caveat here. A lot of unknowns, but nothing I say in any of my calls ever, or any of these things ever, constitutes legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. I can't give legal advice. You'll need to get a lawyer for that. That being said, I have had this happen to us. In fact, we constantly have this happen to us. It's just part of business on some level that you're always going to be dealing with accounts receivable and people that are just late or don't pay or whatever. But you do have several options here. And I guess one of the major things that affects how you respond to this too is the amount, because the amount matters on some levels. But my question is hopefully, and before I start that, hopefully you can learn something from this and how to move forward. Do you have anything in writing though? Did you have a contract? And if not, this would be one of those things that you could learn. You need to have a writing, something written that kind of outlines what the payment is, how it's going to be paid, when it's going to be paid. Depending on the type of work you do, it's usually on like a net 15, net 30, net 60, whatever. You obviously, you want, paid sooner is better, but you need something in writing. If it's just your word, you're going to have a very hard time collecting anything, probably in the long term, if they just flat out refuse. So if you don't have a process for how that's done, how you actually bill people and what, how your service agreements work or contracts work, you need to get that in place. But yeah, do it moving forward. An option you have, depending on the amount and where you live at, is also small claims court. So you can look at suing them in small claims court typically. And again, I can't speak for every state and I'm not a lawyer, but typically small claims court is something like 5,000 or less, 3,000 or less. And it does not involve lawyers, so that helps on the financial side, but it does take your time. And so that's a way you can try to recoup that money. It's an option, something to consider if you haven't heard of it before, but you will have to do all the work yourself there as far as filing and everything else. You can try to get their attention by resending it, something we will sometimes do with no actual hopes of collecting a late fee, but we'll resend it with a late fee in red and give them like 10 days, or it's going to increase to this amount, so they can pay it now and pay the original amount, or they can pay it in 10 days and they'll owe more. Again, you don't have much teeth in that especially if you don't have something in your contract. But we include a 10% late fee for all of ours in our contract, and we've only ever had one come back on that, and I think they changed it to a 1% fee. But it's an option to consider, and it helps. People always want to pay the lesser amount. If you give them two options and one's lesser, that might help get them moving on the payment. You could offer them a payment plan to try to help them. Again, I don't know what kind of work you're doing exactly here or what the amount is, but maybe giving them some options if like, hey, you can make good on this, just pay it over time. If it's a bigger amount, I think we're going through, I wouldn't say it's a bigger amount for us, but it's past the small claims amount. You may want to get an attorney involved. We are looking at currently like placing a lien on a property for a company we provided security for, and they owe us, I think they owe us like $35,000. They haven't paid for a year. It's a really small account, so we just, honestly, that was a mistake on our part letting it slip that high. But it's one of those ones. It's kind of easy to watch because it's so small. But I don't know the amount for you. So if the amount's big like that, you can consider that. That's a route we're taking. Getting an attorney involved often gets people's attention a lot more than not having an attorney at all. And then the other option is, have you just visited them in person? Calling is a very easy way to get blown off. Emailing is a super easy way to get blown off. Visiting in person makes it a lot harder. And yeah, it's awkward sometimes, but you can be perfectly polite about it, how you approach it. You can have a lot of tact in doing that, but it makes it a lot harder to blow off, especially if it's a place of business. Again, I don't know. I mean, going to somebody's house is a whole different thing. And I want to stress, I'm not an attorney, but you will deal with this as you grow your business. I mean, it's a part of business, and so having those processes in place, like a written document that stipulates how you're going to collect your payments and what the timelines are, is something you need to have if you don't. So hopefully that helps, AJ. Again, message me if you want further there or a better explanation. Next question is from Heather. Question Heather asked was, when sending an employee for a drug test, is it best to have them accompanied by a member of management? I recently had an issue with an employee involved in one of my vehicles. We have on-site drug tests, but I realize I need to have an option for sending her to a facility for better accuracy. Is it best to have them accompanied by a member of management to ensure accuracy of the results? This doesn't seem to be a good use of time, but I also need to make sure the results would not be tainted at all. Again, Heather, so as I said to AJ, I am not a lawyer, and every state, getting into drug testing gets kind of tricky as far as when you can, when you can't, how that has to work. So please keep that in mind. You need to research your own state and potentially even talk to an attorney. But I mean, there's not only are there local state laws, there's also federal guidelines that matter too as well. So that being said, I have a ton of experience with getting drug tested between the military and the police department, but and then we also drug test our employees. Obviously, that's part of the background and stuff. I don't, and my honest answer is I wouldn't do it myself. I'm not going to spend that time doing it. I don't know why you question the accuracy. If you think they're trying to cheat the drug test, maybe. I mean, people definitely try that. They definitely attempt it, and some of them probably successfully so. But if you have a person that you don't trust enough to not cheat on a drug test, I mean, that raises so many other questions, like why are they even working for you to begin with? I get it, but it seems to me like, and again, the question I would ask, and I mentioned earlier, is how does that scale? So if you franchise, like I know you talked about doing in the past, and it would be super exciting to see you do, by the way, but if you franchise and you all of a sudden you have 300, trucks out there, is every time you do a drug test, are you going to have some management member from that franchise go out? But that to me seems like a large waste of time that doesn't provide a lot of value. If you want to get really down into it, are you going to actually have them watch a drug test? And that's going to get into some legal stuff as well. There's a billion ways to cheat drug tests, I suppose, but it just doesn't seem to me like, I think you're looking at it. I don't know what your major concern here is. If your major concern is they're doing drugs, or your major concern is that like somebody gets into a wreck and then you get sued, and some kind of accusation that your drug tests aren't good enough. And what I would do, and if that is your concern, is the same thing we do, which is just use a third-party provider. We literally just go on a website, we enter in their email address. That email address, they get sent a drug test. They have a certain amount of time to show up to a facility. They go to a facility, and the facility conducts that. And that facility is obviously has vested interest in making sure that there's accurate results. It's not that expensive either. I think $50 or $60 is typically what we pay for a drug test. I would go that route. I feel like you're adding a bunch of unneeded stuff on there. Again, my personal opinion, but I would never try to send a member of management with. And then what happens when you can't send a member of management? I mean, I'm getting a bit down into the weeds here, but then somebody goes without, and then you have some accusations of they're not being treated the same as everybody else. But, and something else I would recommend doing, but is establish a clear drug testing policy. Like, what is your process? And treat everybody exactly the same. That's going to limit your liability in some, you can't say you have random drug testing and then you just keep testing the same person because you think they're on drugs. That's not random. But again, that's, it's up to you. You could. I don't see why you couldn't do that. Again, you might want to consult a lawyer, and then exactly how are they going to make sure of everything. But I wouldn't do it, and that's just that's my opinion for whatever that's worth. And I agree with you, by the way, on the net 15 down there. Make it as short as possible, or even do on receipt back for AJ's in the comment section. But okay, last question, and this one. Is from Gabor. I hope I'm saying that right. I haven't actually met you, but if I'm not, feel free to correct me. But the question that he asked was, how do you effectively manage your time in the long term? And business description and background. In the past, I never understood how leading CEOs and business owners can have calendar filled up for months or even years in advance. As a starting business owner, I was always just focused on doing the next thing. However, at this point, I have so many commitments, plans, and ideas I want to execute, as well as people demanding access to my time, that this has become impossible. I feel overwhelmed and can't dedicate the kind of focus to any one task as I'd like. Because when I finish a world-class job, instead of feeling fulfilled, I gasp at my to-do list being filled with 15 other things. And this is in spite of me having learned to say no to a lot of things. I'd appreciate any tips on realistically planning my commitments for the weeks and months ahead. becoming committed to one thing at a time, and effectively communicating to other people that, sorry, your super urgent and important thing might get done in 3 months or later. So I talk a lot about time management. I'm huge on time management. A lot of people struggle with that, whether they think they do or not. But I'll just start with to-do lists are only half of the solution. To-do lists are nice in that when you write stuff down, you get it out of your head. So you make this long to-do list, you feel better because you've got it all out of your head. The problem with to-do list is, and you've kind of already outlined this in a roundabout way, but to-do lists don't tell you when you're going to do something. They just say you need to do something. And that doesn't remove the stress in the long term, so you're going to keep coming back to your to-do list, oh my God, I got so much to do, and you have no idea when you're going to do it. If instead of using a to-do list, you just literally schedule everything. If you say, I'm going to add this, you don't add it to a to-do list, you add that to a calendar and say, okay, this will take me whatever it takes, 2 hours, 5 hours, and you schedule it out. Sometimes you have to break them up, but you schedule it out over time. You're doing several things that would solve your problem there. And the first is you're getting it out of your head, like I said, that a to-do list does, but you're also saying, this is when I'm going to do it. And I don't even need to worry about it until I hit that point. You're also saying you're filling up your schedule as it goes, and you can say, I have time to do this or I don't, instead of just adding something to do this. Because the thing about a to-do list is it can be infinite. The amount of time you have is not infinite. And that's, again, another problem with to-do list, and why I'm not a huge fan. Listen, they're better than nothing, and any time management system is better than nothing. But instead of putting on a to-do list, schedule everything out. Instead of saying, yeah, let me add that to my do list, open up your calendar and start plugging it in. I'd love to do that. I'll do it. And then all of a sudden you flip through and like, oh, well, I can do that in 3 weeks. And that goes back to answering your question about how do you communicate effectively to people. But you can blame the calendar. Like, oh, let's see, I have a spot open in 3 weeks or 3 months or whatever. But, and the other thing you said here was, sorry, your super urgent and important thing might get done. Listen, if you let other people fill up your calendar with their super important stuff, they're always going to do that. They always have stuff that's, to them, is a bigger priority than anything you're doing. And if you're letting people do that to you, you got to change that part of it too. You have to have your, again, vision, your goals, and where you want to be. You have to plan those out. Just adding infinite things to your to-do list isn't going to solve your problem. Put it in the calendar. I cannot stress that enough. I cannot stress how well that system works for me. Where you're actually planning those things out in the calendar. You're not just saying, I need to do this. You're saying, I'm going to do this at this time. So the bottom line, schedule it, period. But otherwise, you're just going to be infinitely adding things to your to-do list, and you have no idea when, and you're going to remain stressed. So I think there's some stuff in the resources folder on that, like a handout that I had for the AO social or summer social. Take a look at that. It talks a little bit about it. It talks about how to build a time management system. But again, you're also welcome to contact me. I've had some one-off sessions with members in the group, kind of going over my time management system as well. So feel free to message me. But anyways, that is all the questions. I appreciate everybody that's watched or will watch this. Thank you for your time. If you have others, feel free to put it in the comments. I can't actually see the comments right now because I'm using my iPad. But, I can. They scroll by, but I missed some of them. So feel free. I'll come back later. I'll try to address any questions that are in the comment section. And I hope you guys have a great day and good luck. Keep swinging.